Hello friends, my name is Tony, and I welcome you back to the special mini-series Let's Read the Longing. These bleak walls could use some more pictures. Ah yes, I will be drawing more in the forthcoming future. But for today's session and for today's episode, we are going to finish reading Aesop's Fables. But first, we have to start our cozy fire. Alright. As you can see, I have acquired some sulfur yellow stones last time I have been playing. I'm not sure when I will upload this episode and whether you will watch my actual gameplay, but they're here already. However, I won't start that smelly fire now because I first want to test it to see what will actually happen, because I do not want my shade to pass out or even die of a poisonous air. So just a regular fire for today. And once I'm done testing, hopefully everything will be fine. Maybe I will do a couple of sessions with smelly fire and smelly fire here in this little cozy place. And as you can see, I have acquired more books. I don't know why there are so many of them, because I have only found 2, however, more than 2 here. Oh, that's nice. Iliad. Is it by Homer? Oh yes, and the third part of Thus Spoke Zarathustra. I wonder how many pages is in here. 301. The Iliad of Homer. Oh yes, oh yes. I think I've actually read some parts of it in university, but I don't precisely remember the meaning and what I was reading, but I think I've liked it, and maybe I will read the Iliad of Homer to you someday. I think it's not the end though. Or maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe there are some more books like this one. I don't know. But for today, however, we will be reading our fables. Let's start. The Eagle and His Captor. A man once caught an eagle, and after clipping his wings, turned him loose among the fowls in his henhouse, where he moped in a corner, looking very dejected and forlorn. After a while, his captor was glad enough to sell him to a neighbor, who took him home and let his wings grow again. As soon as he had recovered the use of them, the eagle flew out and caught a hare, which he brought home and presented to his benefactor. A fox observed this and said to the eagle, "Don't waste your gifts on him. Go and give them to the man who first caught you. Make him your friend, and then perhaps he won't catch you and clip your wings a second time." Doesn't make actual sense, or does it? I don't know. You decide. The blacksmith and his dog. A blacksmith had a little dog which used to sleep when his master was at work, but was very wide awake indeed when it was time for meals. One day his master pretended to be disgusted at this, and when he had thrown him a bone as usual, he said, "What on earth is the good of a lazy cur like you? When I'm hammering away at my anvil, you just curl up and go to sleep. But no sooner do I stop for a mouthful of food than you wake up and wag your tail to be fed. Those who will not work deserve to starve." Once again, I don't think it's fair to dogs, because, you know, they are your loyal and best friends ever. The stag at the pool. A thirsty stag went down to a pool to drink. As he bent over the surface, he saw his own reflection in the water and was struck with admiration for his fine, spreading antlers. But at the same time, he felt nothing but disgust for the weakness and slenderness of his legs. While he stood there looking at himself, he was seen and attacked by a lion. But in the chase which ensued, he soon drew away from his pursuer and kept his head as long as the ground over which he ran was open and free of trees. But coming presently to a wood, he was caught by his antlers in the branches and fell a victim to the teeth and claws of his enemy. "Woe is me!" he cried with his last breath. "I despised my legs, which might have saved my life, but I gloried in my horns, and they have proved me ruin. What is worst, most is often valued least." That's actually true. That is actually true. Beauty isn't going to save the world. Your legs will. The Dog and the Shadow. A dog was crossing a plank bridge over a stream with a piece of meat in his mouth when he happened to see his own reflection in the water. He thought it was another dog with a piece of meat twice as big, so he let go his own and flew at the other dog to get the larger piece. But of course all that happened was that he got neither, for one was only a shadow and the other was carried away by the current. Mercury and the Tradesman. When Jupiter was creating man, he told Mercury to make an infusion of lies and to add a little of it to the other ingredients which went to the making of the tradesman. Mercury did so and introduced an equal amount into each in turn, the tallow, chandler, and the greengrocer and the haberdasher, and all till he came to the horse dealer, who was last on the list. When finding what he had a quantity of the infusion still left, he put it all into him. This is why all tradesmen lie more or less, but they none of them lie like a horse dealer. Wow. The Mice and the Weasels. There was war between the mice and the weasels, in which the mice always got the worst of it, numbers of them being killed and eaten by the weasels. So they called a council of war, in which an old mouse got up and said, "It's no wonder we are always beaten, for we have no generals to plan our battles and direct our movements in the field." Acting on his advice, they chose the biggest mice to be the leaders, and these, in order to be distinguished from the rank and file, provided themselves with helmets bearing large plumes of straw. They then led out the mice to battle, confident of victory. But they were defeated as usual and were soon scampering as fast as they could to the halls. All made their way to safety without difficulty except the leaders, who were so hampered by the badges of the rank that they could not get into the halls and fell easy victims to the pursuers. Greatness carries its own penalties. Yeah, pretty much ego is not your amigo. The Peacock and Juno. The Peacock was greatly discontented because he had not a beautiful voice like the nightingale, and he went and complained to Juno about it. "The nightingale's song," said he, "is the envy of all the birds, but whenever I utter a sound I become a laughing stock." The goddess tried to console him by saying, "You have not, it is true, the power of song, but then you far excel all the rest in beauty. Your neck flashes like the emerald, and your splendid tail is a marvel of gorgeous color." But the Peacock was not appeased. "What is the use," said he, "of being beautiful with a voice like mine?" Then Juno replied, with a shade of sternness in her tones, "Fate has allotted to all the destined gifts, to yourself beauty, to the eagle strength, to the nightingale song, and so on to all the rest in their degree. But you alone are dissatisfied with your portion. Make then no more complaints, for if your present wish were granted, you would quickly find cause for fresh discontent." Oh yes, I like this one. I like this one a lot. You pretty much if you complain about one thing, you will always complain about anything else. The Bear and the Fox. A bear was once bragging about his generous feelings and saying how refined he was compared with other animals. There is in fact a tradition that a bear will never touch a dead body. That's cool. A fox who heard him talking in these strains smiled and said, "My friend, when you are hungry, I only wish you would confine your attention to the dead and leave the living alone. A hypocrite deceives no one but himself." The Ass and the Old Peasant. I'm curious, why is he called Donkey the Ass all the time? I mean, I'm fine with that, but YouTube algorithm may find this word offensive in a sense, so I don't know, I just don't like it. An old peasant was sitting in a meadow watching his ass, which was gazing close by when all of a sudden he caught sight of armed men stealthily approaching. He jumped up in a moment and begged the ass to fly with him as fast as he could. "Or else," said he, "we shall both be captured by the enemy." But the ass just looked around lazily and said, "And if so, do you think they will make me carry heavier loads than I have to now?" "No," said his master. "Oh well then," said the ass, "I don't mind if they do take me, for I shan't be any worse off." The Ox and the Frog. Two little frogs were playing about at the edge of a pool when an ox came down to the water to drink and by accident trod on one of them and crushed the life out of him. Ouch. When the old frog missed him, she asked his brother where he was. "He is dead, mother," said the little frog. "An enormous big creature with 4 legs came to our pool this morning and trampled him down in the mud." "Enormous, was he? Was he as big as this?" said the frog, puffing herself out to look as big as possible. "Oh yes, much bigger," was the answer. The frog puffed herself out still more. "Was he as big as this?" said she. "Oh yes, yes, mother, much bigger," said the little frog, and yet again she puffed and puffed herself out till she was almost as round as the ball. "As big as?" she began, but then she burst. What? The Man and the Image. A poor man had a wooden image of a god to which he used to pray daily for riches. He did this for a long time, but remained as poor as ever, till one day he caught up the image in disgust and hurled it with all his strength against the wall. The force of the blow split open the head, and a quantity of gold coins fell out upon the floor. The man gathered them up greedily and said, "Oh, you old fraud, you! When I honored you, you did me no good whatever, but no sooner do I treat you to insults and violence than you make a rich man of me." You know what? It may sound strange, but sometimes you just act nice and sweet and just super beautiful to a person or to whatever, and nothing really happens. Nothing. And then you just fed up with everything, and all of a sudden everything starts to work. I've actually noticed it myself as well. Hercules and the Wagoner. A wagoner was driving his team along a muddy lane with a full load behind them when the wheels of his wagon sunk so deep in the mire that no efforts of his horses could move them. As he stood there looking helplessly on and calling loudly at intervals upon Hercules for assistance, the god himself appeared and said to him, "Put your shoulder to the wheel, man, and guard on your horses, and then you may call on Hercules to assist you. If you won't lift a finger to help yourself, you can't expect Hercules or anyone else to come to your aid. Heaven helps those who help themselves." Also, this is a good story, and it's like, I've heard that many times, that imagine if your car broke down in the middle of a road and you just sit here and wait for help, or you just, asking for help for people and nobody really stops to help you. But then you start to fixing your car by yourself, and when you do that, people will stop by and will help you with your car because they see you just kind of want to work yourself, and that energy that you're not just sitting here and complaining and asking for help, but you also helping yourself first, and this is very, very important. The pomegranate and the apple tree and the bramble. A pomegranate and an apple tree were disputing about the quality of the fruits, and each claimed that its own was the better of the two. High words passed between them, and a violent quarrel was imminent, when a bramble impudently poked its head out of a neighboring hedge and said, "There, that's enough, my friends. Don't let us quarrel." Don't get it. The Lion, the Bear and the Fox. A lion and a bear were fighting for possession of a kid which they had both seized at the same moment. The battle was long and fierce, and at length both of them were exhausted and lay upon the ground, severely wounded and gasping for breath. A fox had all the time been prowling round and watching the fight, And when he saw the combatants lying there too weak to move, he slipped in and seized the kid and ran off with it. They looked on helplessly, and one said to the other, "Here we have been mauling each other all this while, and no one's the better for it except the fox." I like it. The blackamoor. A man once bought an Ethiopian slave who had a black skin like all Ethiopians. Ouch. I don't like the slave tales, but, you know, I think Aesop was a slave himself, so... Yeah, I'm all against the slavery in itself. It's just wrong. But his new master thought his color was due to his late owners having neglected him, and that all he wanted was a good scrubbing. So he set to work with plenty of soap and hot water and rubbed away at him with a wheel, but all to no purpose. His skin remained as black as ever, while the poor wretch all but died from the cold he caught. The two soldiers and the robber. Two soldiers traveling together were set upon by a robber. One of them ran away, but the other stood his ground and led about him so lustily with his sword that the robber was fain to fly and leave him in peace. When the coast was clear, the timid one ran back and, flourishing his weapon, cried in a threatening voice, "Where is he? Let me get at him, and I will soon let him know whom he's got to deal with." But the other replied, "You're a little late, my friend. I only wish you had backed me up just now, even if you had done no more than speak, for I should have been encouraged, believing your words to be true, as it is. Calm yourself and put up your sword. There is no further use for it. You may delude others into thinking you are as brave as a lion, but I know that, at the first sign of danger, you run away like a hare." The lion and the wild donkey. A lion and a wild donkey. I will call this donkey because I don't really like this. A lion and a wild donkey went out hunting together. It's weird that wild donkey will go hunting, but anyway. The latter was to run down the prey by his superior speed, and the former would then come up and dispatch it. They met with great success, and when it came to sharing the spoil, the lion divided it all into 3 equal portions. "I will take the first," said he, "because I am king of the beasts. I will also take the second, because as your partner I am entitled to half of what remains. And as for the third, well, unless you give it up to me and take yourself off pretty quick, the third, believe me, will make you feel very sorry for yourself. Might makes right." Oh my god, this is so wrong. The man and the satyr. A man and a satyr became friends and determined to live together. All went well for a while, until one day in winter time the satyr saw the man blowing on his hands. "Why do you do that?" he asked. "To warm my hands," said the man. That same day, when they sat down to supper together, they each had a steaming hot bowl of porridge, and the man raised his bowl to his mouth and blew on it. "Why do you do that?" asked the satyr. "To cool my porridge," said the man. The satyr got up from the table. "Goodbye," said he. "I am going. I can't be friends with a man who blows hot and cold with the same breath." What? Oh, this is impossible. This is incredible, actually. Oh yeah, it's funny. Image seller. A certain man made a wooden image of Mercury and exposed it for sale in the market, and so one offered to buy it. However, he thought he would try to attract a purchaser by proclaiming the virtues of the image. So he cried up and down the market, "A god for sale, a god for sale, one who will bring you luck and keep you lucky." Presently one of the bystanders stopped him and said, "If your god is all you make him out to be, how is it you don't keep him and make the most of him yourself?" "I will tell you why," replied he. "He brings gain, it is true, but he takes his time about it, whereas I want money at once." Alright. The eagle and the arrow. An eagle sat perched on a lofty rock, keeping a sharp lookout for prey. A huntsman, concealed in a cleft on the mountain and on the watch for game, spied him there and shot an arrow at him. The shaft struck him full in the breast and pierced him through and through. As he lay in the agonies of death, he turned his eyes upon the arrow. "Ah, cruel fate," he cried, "that I should perish thus, but oh, fate more cruel still, that the arrow which kills me should be winged with an eagle's feathers. Oh, damn. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Fate, it seems, is like a destiny. The rich man and the tanner. A rich man took up his residence next door to a tanner and found the smell of the tan yard so extremely unpleasant that he told him he must go. The tanner delayed his departure, and the rich man had to speak to him several times about it, and every time the tanner said he was making arrangements to move very shortly. This went on for some time, till at last the rich man got so used to the smell that he ceased to mind it and troubled the tanner with his objections no more. Adaptation. Here are adaptation machines. The wolf, the mother and her child. A hungry wolf was prowling about in search of food. By and by, attracted by the cries of a child, he came to a cottage. As he crouched beneath the window, he heard the mother say to the child, "Stop crying, do, or I'll throw you to the wolf." Thinking she really meant what she said, he waited there a long time in the expectation of satisfying his hunger. In the evening he heard the mother fondling her child and saying, "If the naughty wolf comes, he shan't get my little one. Daddy will kill him." The wolf got up in much disgust and walked away. "As for the people in that house," said he to himself, "you can't believe a word they say." The old woman and the wine jar. An old woman picked up an empty wine jar which had once contained a rare and costly wine and which still retained some traces of its exquisite bouquet. She raised it to her nose and sniffed at it again and again. "Ah," she cried, "how delicious must have been the liquid which has left behind so ravishing a smell." The lioness and the vixen. A lioness and a vixen were talking together about the young as mother's will and saying how healthy and well-grown they were and what beautiful coats they had, and how they were the image of their parents. "My litter of calves is a joy to see," said the fox, and then she added rather maliciously, "But I notice you never have more than one." "No," said the lioness grimly, "but that one's a lion. Quality, not quantity." Ouch. The viper and the file. A viper entered a carpenter's shop and went from one to another of the tools, begging for something to eat. Among the rest, he addressed himself to the file and asked for the favor of a meal. The file replied in a tone of pitying contempt, "What a simpleton you must be if you imagine you will get anything from me, who invariably take from everyone and never give anything in return. The covetous are poor givers." The cat and the cock. A cat pounced on a cock and cast about for some good excuse for making a meal of him, for cats don't as a rule eat cocks, and she knew she ought not to. At last she said, "You make a great nuisance of yourself at night by crowing and keeping people awake, so I am going to make an end of you." But the cock defended himself by saying that he crowed in order that men might wake up and set about the day's work in good time, and that they really couldn't very well do without him. "That may be," said the cat, "but whether they can or not, I am not going without my dinner," and she killed and ate him. The want of a good excuse never kept a villain from crime. That's an interesting way to say it. The Hare and the Tortoise. Hare was one day making fun of a tortoise for being so slow upon his feet. "Wait a bit," said the tortoise, "I will run a race with you, and I will wager that I win." "Oh well," replied the hare, who was much amused at the idea. "Let's try and see," and it was soon agreed that the fox should set a course for them and be the judge. When the time came, both started off together, but the hare was soon so far ahead that he thought he might as well have a rest, so down he lay and fell fast asleep. Meanwhile the tortoise kept plodding on and in time reached the goal. At last the hare woke up with a start and dashed on at his fastest, but only to find that the tortoise had already won the race. Slow and steady wins the race. Yeah, in other words, consistency will make you win. The soldier on his horse. A soldier gave his horse a plentiful supply of oats in time of war and tended him with the utmost care, for he wished him to be strong, to endure the hardships of the field, and swift to bear his master when neither was out of the reach of danger. But when the war was over, he employed him on all sorts of drudgery, bestowing but little attention upon him and giving him, moreover, nothing but chaff to eat. The time came when war broke out again, and the soldier saddled and bridled his horse, and having put on his heavy coat of mail, mounted him to ride off and take the field. But the poor half-starved beast sunk down under his weight and said to his rider, "You will have to go into battle on foot this time. Thanks to hard work and bad food, you have turned me from a horse into an ass, and you cannot in a moment turn me back again into a horse." It is a good story. The oxen and the butchers. Once upon a time, the oxen determined to be revenge upon the butchers for the havoc they wrought in their ranks and plotted to put them to death on a given day. They were all gathered together discussing how best to carry out the plan, and the more violent of them were engaged in sharpening their horns for the fray, when an old ox got up upon his feet and said, "My brothers, you have good reason, I know, to hate these butchers, but at any rate, they understand their trade and do what they have to do without causing unnecessary pain. But if we kill them, others who have no experience will be set to slaughter us and will by their bungling inflict great sufferings upon us. For you may be sure that even though all the butchers perish, mankind will never go without their beef." Oh, that might be a long topic on being vegetarian or vegans, but I will leave it for another time. The Wolf and the Lion. A wolf stole a lamb from the flock and was carrying it off to devour it at his leisure when he met a lion who took his prey away from him and walked off with it. He dared not resist, but when the lion had gone some distance, he said, "It is most unjust of you to take what's mine away from me like that." The lion laughed and called out in reply, "It was justly yours, no doubt. The gift of a friend, perhaps, hey?" The sheep, the wolf, and the stag. A stag once asked a sheep to lend him a measure of wheat, saying that his friend the wolf would be his surety. The sheep, however, was afraid that they meant to cheat her, so she excused herself, saying, "The wolf is in the habit of seizing what he wants and running off with it without pain, and you too can run much faster than I. So how shall I be able to come up with either of you when the debt falls due? Two blacks do not make a white." I guess. I don't know. The Lion and the Three Bulls. Three bulls were gazing in a meadow and were watched by a lion who longed to capture and devour them, but who felt that he was no match for the three so long as they kept together. So he began to false whispers and malicious hints to foment jealousies and distrust among them. This stratagem succeeded so well that along the bulls grew cold and unfriendly and finally avoided each other and fed each one by himself apart. No sooner did the lion seize it than he fell upon them one by one and killed them in turn. The quarrels of friends are the opportunities of foes. The horse and his rider. A young man who fancied himself something of a horseman mounted a horse which had not been properly broken in and was exceedingly difficult to control. No sooner did the horse feel his weight in the saddle than he bolted, and nothing would stop him. A friend of the rider's met him in the road in his headlong career and called out, "Where are you off to such a hurry?" To which he, pointing to the horse, replied, "I've no idea. Ask him." The goat and the wine. A goat was straying in a vineyard and began to browse on the tender shoots of a vine which bore several fine bunches of grapes. "What have I done to you," said the vine, "that you should harm me thus? Isn't there grass enough for you to feed on? All the same, even if you eat up every leaf I have and leave me quite bare, I shall produce wine enough to pour over you when you are led to the altar to be sacrificed." Wow. The two pots. Two pots, one of the earthenware and the other of brass, were carried away down a river in floods. The brazen pot urged his companion to keep close by his side, and he would protect him. The other thanked him, but begged him not to come near him on any account. "For that," he said, "is just what I am most afraid of. One touch from you and I shall be broken in pieces." Equals make the best friends. The Old Hound. A hound who has served his master well for years and had run down many a quarry in his time began to lose his strength and speed owing to age. One day, when out hunting, his master spotted a powerful wild boar and set the hound at him. The latter seized the beast by the ear, but his teeth were gone and he could not retain his hold. So the boar escaped. His master began to scold him severely, but the hound interrupted him with these words: "My will is as strong as ever, master, but my body is old and feeble. You ought to honor me for what I have been instead of abusing me for what I am." I agree on that. The Clown and the Countryman. A nobleman announced his intention of giving a public entertainment in the theater and offered splendid prizes to all who had any novelty to exhibit at the performance. The announcement attracted a crowd of conjurers, jugglers, and acrobats, and among the rest a clown very popular with the crowd, who let it be known that he was going to give an entirely new turn. When the day of the performance came, the theater was filled from top to bottom some time before the entertainment began. Several performers exhibited their tricks, and then the popular favorite came on empty-handed and alone. At once there was a hush of expectation, and he, letting his head fall upon his breast, imitated the squeak of a pig to such perfection that the audience insisted on his producing the animal, which they said he must have somewhere concealed about his person. He, however, convinced them that there was no pig there, and then the applause was deafening. Among the spectators was a countryman who disparaged the clown's performance and announced that he would give a much superior exhibition of the same trick on the following day. Again, the theater was filled to overflowing, and again the clown gave his imitation amidst the cheers of the crowd. The countryman, meanwhile, before going on the stage, had secreted a young porker under his smock, and when the spectators derisively bade him do better if he could, he gave it a pinch in the ear and made it squeal loudly, but they always one voice shouted out that the clown's imitation was much more true to life. Thereupon he produced the pig from under his smock and said sarcastically, "There, that shows what sort of judges you are." Jealousy. The Lark and the Farmer. A lark nested in a field of corn and was rearing her brood under cover of the ripening grain. One day, before the young were fully fledged, the farmer came to look at the crop, and finding it yellow and fast, he said, "I must send round word to my neighbors to come and help me reap this field." One of the young larks overheard him and was very much frightened, and asked her mother whether they hadn't better move house at once. "There is no hurry," replied she. "A man who looks to his friends for help will take his time about, I think." In a few days the farmer came by again and saw that the grain was overripe and falling out of the ears upon the ground. "I must put it off no longer," he said. "This very day I will hire the men and set them to work at once." The lark heard him and said to her young, "Come, my children, we must be off. He talks no more of his friends now, but is going to take things in hand himself. Self-help is the best help." On that, I agree. The Lion and the Donkey. A lion and a donkey set up as partners and went a-hunting together. Again? In course of time they came to a cave in which there was a number of wild goats. The lion took up his stand at the mouth of the cave and waited for them to come out, while the donkey went inside and brayed for all he was worth in order to frighten them out in the open. The lion struck them down one by one as they appeared, and when the cave was empty, the donkey came out and said, "Well, I scared them pretty well, didn't I?" "I should think you did," said the lion. "Why, if I hadn't known you were a donkey, I should have turned and run myself." Wow. The Prophet. A prophet sat in the marketplace and told the fortunes of all who cared to engage his services. Suddenly there came running up one who told him that his house had been broken into by thieves and that they had made off with everything they could lay hands on. He was up in a moment and rushed off, tearing his hair and calling down curses on the miscreants. The bystanders were much amused, and one of them said, "Our friend professes to know what is going to happen to others, but it seems he is not clever enough to perceive what's in store for himself." Yeah, they fooled the old man. The Hound and the Hare. A young hound started a hare, and when he caught her up, would at one moment snubbed her with his teeth as though he were about to kill her, while at another he would let go his hold and frisk about her as if he were playing with another dog. At last the hare said, "I wish you would show yourself in your true colors. If you are my friend, why do you bite me? If you are my enemy, why do you play with me? He is no friend who plays double." Yeah, that is true. The Lion, the Mouse, and the Fox. A lion was lying asleep at the mouth of his den when a mouse ran over his back and tickled him so that he woke up with a start and began looking about everywhere to see what it was that had disturbed him. A fox, who was looking on, thought he would have a joke at the expense of the lion, so he said, "Well, this is the first time I have seen a lion afraid of a mouse." "Afraid of a mouse?" said the lion testily. "Not I. It's his bad manners I can't stand." This is a beautiful one to end this book, to be honest. I really loved Aesop Fables, and seeing as it's Fables book 1, I guess there is another book somewhere lying in this maze of caves. Anyway, guys, this is it. I thank you all so very much for being here, for listening to these fables. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Thank you all so much. Please stay awesome, please be healthy, and always yourself. I will see you soon. Much love.